My message in general, I come from the for-profit cell manufacturing space. Joined the board of the foundation about 2 years ago. Last year, stepped in to run it full time alongside the Whitehead family as we've grown. And really, the message that we've been preaching is collaboration. One of the things that a bit unexpected in the nonprofit world is that it can be just as competitive as our for-profit lives. So in CGT specifically, I think collaboration across uh, different technologies, different entities is incredibly important. And bringing that patient voice to this type of conference is really important as well. My exposure to Emily's story and the Emily Whitehead Foundation was actually at Phacilitate years ago with Tom Whitehead giving a talk. So we've been looking to expand that collaboration and bring a bit more of the patient voice across the ecosystem, partnering closer with Phacilitate to do that this year. Starting right at the very beginning, there's an awareness problem across the board. Even prior to the really difficult problems of access, affordability that we try to sort out as well. It's really that awareness, and that's where these patient stories and narratives really come in handy. Not just Emily's, but other pediatric and adult patients that are here. Came across another really powerful advocate, Lori Adamai, here, who was part of a session, and too many times people hear about a CAR T therapy or these advanced therapies through a video of Emily or through a news article, and that's part of the mission here. Educating rural doctors around the commercialization of these therapies, bringing them closer to the patient in some way, where that is happening. And I think Phacilitate's a great place to talk about these supply chain logistics issues. And the biggest problem overall is really that access piece globally. How are we going to move patients to these centers? How are we going to get them paid for? What is the value of these versus other types of therapies to move them further up the front line? There's a myriad of challenges, but trying to raise that awareness at the beginning. And then on the Emily Whitehead Foundation side, what programs can we build to connect patients to the clinical trials, commercially approved therapies, and to the right folks that can get them these treatments in a meaningful way? It really is the pace at which innovation happens in a market like cell and gene therapy. As soon as one CAR T is approved, there may be another CAR T from another pharma company. There may be a new modality peeking out to cure the same disease. And that's just something that was not the case in the past, with long lines of chemotherapy and radiation, and then the world of immunotherapies popping in. I think it's an exciting piece, but it also is a challenge at times. What level of detail do patients need to know about the technology behind their therapy? What are the differences in side effects? I think from a pure treatment perspective, it's a great problem to have, where we're bringing less toxic, better treatments to the path. But I think the regulating bodies, payers, are trying to figure out how to pay for them along the way with this rapid innovation. So I think it's an opportunity as well, but certainly keeping up, that's a part of that awareness problem that we chat about. Keeping up with the latest and greatest, educating patients as to what these differences are, and providing that forum via the Emily Whitehead Foundation and other nonprofits that we partner with to get that information out there around CAR T and other advanced therapies. To truly have an impact in a nonprofit, it has to be treated and run like a business. So my for-profit experience in running businesses in the cell and gene therapy space, certainly relevant. And just the connection from research and development to the technologies here at Phacilitate in the process development and manufacturing space, all the way to the patient. I think there's a huge connection. And I'm always been fascinated in CAR T and cell and gene therapy and in rare disease, how unique it is and that how close to the patient we can get. A lot of it has to do with the fact that patient cells are collected, touched by anywhere from 10 to 50 members of a pharmaceutical company or an academic lab. I think instilling that message and understanding the technology brings a different voice to the table in the nonprofit space and further connects that patient to the technologies and the therapies themselves. Like any foray into a new entry, it's a lot of listening and understanding the stakeholders present. Uh, One thing that I've noticed as we've branched outside of just CAR T into the rare disease space, treated by advanced therapies, there are so many times that a parent will receive a rare disease diagnosis and not know what to do and just start doing. And connecting those folks that have done it before is a really big part of that. I think so many times you figure, and I can't imagine, I have not been through it myself. Your child is diagnosed with a rare disease, really hard to even diagnose this. Once you get a diagnosis, there's no cure. What do you do next? Everybody just starts doing. Where as we've gathered more parents and patients together and listened, a lot of those same challenges of awareness and what's next and where do we receive funding and what do we do seem to be reinvented each and every time. These charities are so powerful in galvanizing the patients for these rare disease. But can there be other platforms where we can connect them to others who have been through it? For instance, last week we hosted a rare disease day in collaboration with a partner called the Bullpen, a connector of life science, pharma CEO, early stage CEOs and investors, and brought the patient story to that. So many unbelievable parents were there talking about how they started their research fund or even how they started their own company to find a cure for their kids. And getting that story out there is, I think, the way that we can increase that awareness around rare disease outside of CAR T and other types of therapies. So much of those journeys look the same to the patient and the caregiver. Can we provide those resources from a patient support and help enable access is where the foundation is looking to in the future. The diverse panels where there's a patient, there's a pharma company, there's a tools provider. I think having forums where we can all get on the stage or the round table together, discuss these problems, but more importantly, after these sessions, what can we do together? How can we start something to drive that forward? I think there's a great job of various parallel tracks, but I think the best part is when the folks from those different tracks get together, share pieces of the problem that might not be aware of, just to connect those dots a bit further. When we think of the pillar that we want to be a part of in the future in enabling access, there is so much that goes into that. Starting from educating early career doctors that these exist. We can start at that minimal level, right? But at the top level, just even gathering an understanding of the different challenges across different governments, different payers, different policies. It is still so early, about 6 years into the first commercialized CAR T, that payers, governments are still behind the learning curve while technology keeps ramping up. So I think engaging in a meaningful way with different governments and educating around this process and the technologies and therapies themselves, what they mean. I think most importantly is to speak about the value that they can create. We think about the toxicity of chemo and radiation as a frontline treatment, whereas a CAR T as a third line treatment can actually prevent a lot of toxicity, prevent a lot of potentially even neurocognitive effects in these patients, and hopefully, as the studies run out, that we see even save money for all involved over the course of treatment. I think it's getting that information and that data in the right position to be able to engage governments is going to be a big part of that access discussion. We had a great discussion with Steve Butterfield from one of their state policy folks. And it's not something that we dig into too deeply at this point at the Emily Whitehead Foundation, but connecting with other nonprofits like LLS and bringing the unique challenges from the patients in the advanced therapy space that we're connected to. I think that's a big part of it. It's even collaboration amongst the nonprofits present here. And can we work together to educate the rest of them, the rest of the delegates involved at the conference? From my for-profit career, we were in the cell collection and cell manufacturing space, built companies to much success, supplied a lot of needed clinical and research materials. But for me, it was always getting a bit closer to the patient. I had joked that in the first company that I worked closely with, Kite Novartis, we were probably 0.00001% responsible for helping them commercialize that therapy. And I always said each move from there on out, can we get, 1 decimal point to the left closer to the patient? Ultimately, landing here at the Emily Whitehead Foundation with the founding board members, including Tom and Carrie and Emily. And you can't get much closer to the patient than getting to talk to patients directly about the challenges each and every day. Uh, and yeah, I couldn't imagine a more rewarding place to be, given starting in CAR T about 11 or 12 years ago on the for-profit life science tool space. There's so much going on in terms of technology and so many discussions around, is it going to be autologous? Is it going to be allogeneic? What is it? I think that one of the main points is that parents really don't care what modality cures their children in the rare disease in any other space. So I think it's that combination of advancing technology as fast as we can to democratize the access to these types of therapies. But I think it is the speed in which we can iterate on them for monogenic diseases and other rare diseases. Platforms can be built. We have our first approval in sickle cell, which is a single gene edit. So many other diseases can potentially follow that same model, whether it's an autologous therapy, an allogeneic, or even a gene therapy. So I think the excitement around it is spreading the word around the how quickly we can get these to market. But I think more importantly, how quickly can we get them to patients? Approvals are great. I think they're a huge part of this. But I think beyond that, it's delivering them to the right communities that need them and engaging with those populations and building the trust across the ecosystem. So really excited for that, but it is a lot of work that will take everybody here at Phacilitate and across the entire ecosystem and beyond. I think it'll take the general public, governments, and others to really understand this. And I think those that have been a part of Phacilitate in its, I think, 12 plus years, maybe even more in existence, it's been our lives for so long that we forget the average person walking down the street might not even know about these approvals, might not even know that these technologies exist, and just continuing that path forward. I think we're excited for that.